Hello and welcome. Today in this video we'll be discussing viruses. So the tagline of viruses is, are they alive or not? It's an age-old debate that, to be completely honest, we still don't have an answer to. So in this video we'll be discussing what a virus is, what it can do, and some common examples. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So viruses are not actually in the Six Kingdoms. So if you think back to the Six Kingdoms lesson, you'll remember that viruses didn't show up. Now, the question is, like we said before, are they living or not? Now, they do go ahead and contain genetic information in either the form of DNA or RNA. However, they lack organelles. So they lack a nucleus, they lack a mitochondria, they lack a cytoplasm even. And the key thing about viruses is they can't reproduce unless they infect another cell as a host. Now, this can go ahead and cause a wide variety of different diseases depending on the virus and what bacteria or what cell they go ahead and infect. Now, viruses are much smaller than bacterial cells, and these are classified according to the types of cells they attack. So different viruses have different names depending on what type of cell they go after. Some go after bacterial cells, some go after reproductive cells, some immune cells. So as we can see here, a virus is incredibly small. A virus is measured in nanometers, whereas a bacteria is measured in micrometers. So micro would be about 0.000001 meter, whereas nanometers would be 0.000000001 meter. So as you can see, viruses are incredibly tiny compared to other cells, which is one of the reasons why they're so hard to go ahead and fight. So viral diseases. Some common examples of viral diseases include AIDS or HIV, measles, hepatitis, chickenpox, smallpox, influenza, so the flu including H1N1, the swine flu, the common cold, which is caused by the rhinovirus, as well as West Nile, which can be spread through mosquitoes. Other examples include Zika and even Ebola, as well as polio, and even herpes. So there's a wide variety of different diseases that are spread depending on the type of virus and where they attack. So the structure of a virus has a center core of DNA or RNA surrounded by a protein coat called a capsid. So as you can see here, these are two different types of viruses. Most of them, as we see here, have a DNA, or some type of genetic information, surrounded by a protein coat. Now the one on the left has the head, which leads into the neck, the collar, the sheath, the base plate at the bottom, and tail fibers, so it kind of looks almost like a robotic spider or insect. And these are basically gigantic hypodermic needles. They'll go ahead, land, inject themselves into a host cell, and start to cause some major damage. Now the one on the right, as you can see, doesn't quite have the mobility, but it makes up for it in it covering itself with spikes. So if any one of those spikes come into contact with a cell, the viral DNA will be injected and the infection process begins. So reproduction, the lytic cycle. The lytic cycle is the first type of infection cycle there is. So as you can see here, the virus first goes ahead, lands on, attaches itself to a cell, and injects its information. So that would be our step one. Now, once it goes ahead and injects its DNA into the host cell, the viral DNA starts to go ahead and overwrite the DNA of the cell. It's like, hey, look, I know, so you might think that, immune system, you might think white blood cells are kind of necessary, but I'm telling you, it's not what people want. They want more virus. That's what they need. So the virus takes over and starts to go ahead and replicate itself more and more and more until eventually the cell can't physically hold the viruses anymore. It is reproduced to the point where the cell will actually explode or lyse, hence the name lytic cycle. So at the end of the lytic cycle, the cell explodes, releasing thousands of more viruses into the body, allowing them to infect more cells. That's another reason why viruses are incredibly hard to fight. The fact that they can spread and multiply so quickly. The next type is called the lysogenic cycle. So as you can see here, it starts off the same with our step number one. The virus goes ahead, attaches to the cell, and injects its DNA. But from here, things take a different turn. The viral DNA, instead of overwriting the DNA of the cell, will actually merge with the DNA of the host. So the cell will go about its normal everyday activities, and every time it replicates, as you see down here, there's a bit of virus inside the cell already. Now this continues until a signal is reached, and once that signal is reached, all of these cells that have the viral DNA will simultaneously go through the lytic cycle. So this is kind of like an incubation period. So when you go ahead and get infected with the flu, you're not sick automatically, but it takes a couple of days for the virus to go ahead and multiply to the point where it makes you sick. The last thing we need to discuss is called a retrovirus, or an RNA virus. Now, a retrovirus injects RNA to reverse engineer its own DNA and merge it with the host. So what this does is it goes ahead and injects its RNA, which is another type of genetic information specifically used to make proteins. And what it does is it actually will go from RNA, reverse engineer a strand of DNA, and merge that with the host cell's DNA, making it incredibly hard to fight off because at that point the cell can't distinguish what's virus DNA and what's the host cell's original DNA. So the host cell can't tell the difference between the two, meaning it can't fight off what's already there. So the host will then go ahead and create viral proteins, continuing with the spread of the virus. The most common example of this is HIV, which is one of the reasons why it's one of the hardest viral infections to go ahead and fight off. And with that, that's going to go ahead and close up the shop on viruses. If you have any questions or would like to go ahead and learn a little bit more about this, please go ahead and ask your instructor. And with that, thank you for watching. That's the end of our video. And until next time, you go ahead and take care of yourself. See ya.